I used to frequently travel before the whole COVID breakout, and throughout my travels across Europe, I ended up spending most of my time walking, more than 20 kilometers a day, and eating everything in sight. But every time I leave a city, I end up almost filling the memory of my phone with pictures of architectural sites I find to be aesthetically appeasing. The Gothic Quarter in Barcelona, the Central Station in Antwerp, St. Peter's Basilica, and the many other cathedrals in Europe for that matter. The National Library in Prague, the list goes on and on. There's nothing more satisfying to me than looking at a bunch of raw metal and glass looking fine.
Hey, does this room look different to you?
How so?
It's like French Rococo style. That doesn't really seem in line with Endicott's Georgian sensibilities.
What the fuck are you talking about, man?
Should I not know that sort of stuff?
And it bothered my travel companions when I ranted about it to the point that they would often leave me gazing at buildings like a lost child. And this excitement for architecture could easily be juxtaposed by my excitement for video games. It's a virtual world, so it is the closest thing to traveling, and my behavior seems to be similar in these virtual worlds because every time I see a building that's breathtaking, I stop and stare. All of us who submerge ourselves in fictitious worlds are concerned with what makes atmosphere. Be it in a game or a movie, how things look plays an important role in how they make us feel. Naturally, that is why something like mise-en-scène exists. It's the reason we associate the blossoms of the spring with rebirth and leafless trees with dilapidation and death. In the same manner, architectural styles help set the mood in any form of media. The Art Deco style, for some reason, sets a foreboding tone in these games, even though Art Deco signifies the complete opposite of these notions. First things first, I have compiled a list and some gameplay from all the games that I could find using the Art Deco style in their worlds. From the games that have already been released, we have the usual suspects, which are Bioshock, Closer to the Sun, and Prey 2016. Those are well known in the industry to be using that style. One might argue that is partly why they stand out so much. But there are some games out there with near perfect scores that are not famous for their art style, like the aforementioned trio. And those are Luigi's Mansion 3.
You don't know that movie? Ghost gives Dan Aykroyd oral sex.
Which seldom comes into conversation. Some chapters from Mafia 2, naturally, since it takes place in real cities, and My Friendly Neighborhood. That's about it, really. A little more than a handful. We had the brilliant Batman animated series back in the 90s. It was pretty Art Deco, and it was pretty awesome. Gen Z has the shittiest Batman conceivable, really.
You're not even the Riddler, you're the Rizzler.
Anyways, that's a show, so it doesn't count. I want to say that Transistor and some elements from Cyberpunk 2077 are Art Deco too, but those games have kind of a neo-retro-futuristic approach to their art, and part of me wants to lie to you and include Liza P since it's so gorgeous, but that is Art Nouveau. As a matter of fact, Art Nouveau was considered to be too vieux jeu to the architects of the 1920s, where Art Deco embraced the joie de vivre of the Jazz Age. Listen, I borrowed these terms from the book that I read. I do not use or like to use such pretentious terms myself, but here's the thing. I have watched a few Art Deco videos before coming here, and they were, in my humble opinion at least, I found them to be lacking, be it in either information or citations. This did not sit right with me, so I did a lot of research and tried to make my video more informative. I started looking for some references and found that several designers and historians have written on the topic of Art Deco, and I spent a significant time avoiding their works and looking for someone who is an actual architect who has written on the topic. I could find none, really. I guess architects are actually busy working and building stuff, these people can write on, I know that I am committing the age-old fallacy of appealing to authority, and I do not care. It's basic human psychology. It's the same reason we listen to the 9 out of 10 doctors who recommend Sensodyne or whatever. We think there's safety in numbers. It's the same reason most of you have already clicked off seeing how I barely have any subscribers. It's a bullshit reason, but in your mind it makes perfect sense. Fucking vieux jeu, Jésus-Christ. But anyways, I ultimately had to settle for a book written by 32 historians and curators. Initially, I was not happy, but some articles are well-researched and well-cited, while others offer cultural analysis that I did not want nor ask for. It's the stuck-up, pseudo-intellectual, progressive shit I had to deal with while actually working at an art museum. But I don't want to pull anything from my ass here, so everything I say about Art Deco is documented in this book. Okay, so let's start with the definition. This is where my journey had begun to be problematic, where my brain aneurysms were triggered. As a philosopher, categorization and definitions are everything, and I was hit with this quote by journalist Martin Grief from back in the day. He insisted that it should be Art Decos, plural, because the term embraces 10 to 15 mutually exclusive styles, each of which can be separated from the others. We have allowed the term to embrace virtually everything that was produced between the two world wars, from the finest French furniture of Pierre Legrand to Tangy lipsticks purchased at the 5 and dime. I'm guessing that's the equivalent of a dollar store. Surely there is a world of difference. And there obviously is. This is not where the problem ends with Art Deco. I read a bit further, and apparently the term Art Deco did not emerge until long after. Here's another quote. Le Corbusier, famous architect, employed the headline 1925 Arts Deco for a series of articles on the decorative arts published in 1925 in his journal L'Esprit Nouveau. His use of the diminutive for the decorative arts was intended to mock their practice, not identify a style. The first use of the phrase Art Deco as a style label occurred in France in 1966 in an exhibition titled Les Années Vincent, or 25, whatever. Art Deco, Bauhaus, Style, L'Esprit Nouveau. So, we know the label came long after the demise of the style. We also know that there was no strict definition for the style. But here's the thing, there were telltale elements that you did know when you looked at it. When you looked at something, you knew it was Art Deco. There were a lot of zigzags, there were a lot of mechanical symbols, etc. So David Hillier, this is one of the interesting quotes that actually makes sense. David Hillier wrote in his book Art Deco of the 20s and 30s that Art Deco was, quote, an assertively modern style developing in the 1920s and reaching its high point in the 1930s. A classical style in that, like neoclassicism, but unlike Rococo or Art Nouveau, it ran to symmetry rather than asymmetry, and to rectilinear rather than curvilinear. It responded to the demands of the machine and of new materials and the requirements of mass production. He continues, the feminine, somewhat conservative style of 1925, chic, elegant, depending on exquisite craftsmanship, and harking back to the 18th century, and the masculine reaction of the 30s with its machine-age symbolism and use of new materials like chrome and plastics in place of the old bow art materials such as ebony and ivory. Even though this quote is better, but I had a problem with the definition, for I did not know what is considered masculine and feminine in architecture, and I did read the entire book, not even skimmed through it. I read every single article, and it never made it clear. It never made it clear what was masculine and what was feminine. So I googled it to find out that masculine architecture is brutalist, linear, and vertical.
That's a penis!
While feminine architecture is curvilinear, horizontal, and flat. I did not come up with these terms. Please don't shoot the messenger. Art Deco culture. Seeing how architecture is a form of art meets engineering and art is a cultural phenomenon, one must look at the culture during that time. There was a metamorphosis, rapid changes in beliefs concerning morality, sexuality, and naturally aesthetics, or what makes something pretty, what makes things appealing, has not always been set in stone. When I think 20s, I think jazz and swing, a band of 16 performers at once on stage, it's almost incomprehensible to the modern mind where we have one moron pushing buttons. I think speakeasies and sexual degeneracy. I think Fleischer Studios and Betty Boop.
A black and white heartthrob from the 20s. Well, she's fat.
Not you. Her. See, Betty had that real dog in her. No, seriously, she was initially a dog with a skimpy dress. And video games back then looked like this. Because they did not exist. How dreadful. It was a time of excess, as is portrayed in the quintessential Jazz Age novel, but which garnered a lot of controversy back in the day, and that novel would be The Great Gatsby. And the recent Babylon movie, which accurately shows the degeneracy of the time. I mean, LA, and especially Hollywood, has always been more degenerate. Prairie times are usually overly consumeristic. Architect Harvey Wiley Corbet remarked, "If commercialism is the guiding spirit of the age, the building which advertises itself is in harmony with that spirit. There's no reason why the term commercialism would ever be considered as opposed to art. Perhaps a new kind of commercialism in its new and higher relation to human welfare." See, everything was ornamented. The building itself was a product and the commercial. The simplest act, say, going to the theater, you had buildings like the Gaumont Palace and Cinema Toscini. They were beautiful Art Deco cinemas that looked like, well, I'm going to show you in the video. But they didn't have Dune popcorn buckets, so we obviously win.
Get it up in your vag with my dick. Gonna put it in with my dick. I'm gonna put my dick in.
What's up, man? You alright?
What's up?
Opulence and excess naturally lead to spiritual bankruptcy. Some buildings had a vaguely atheistic aesthetic. I say vaguely because a lot of religions believe in free will, with the belief of homo faber. It's a Latin phrase, which means human beings are able to control their fate and their environment as a result of the use of tools. So in places, it was vaguely atheistic and necessarily atheistic in some other buildings like the Shannon Building, where, I quote, René Chambellan and Jacques Delamare worked on the copper épousé frisé, or frieze, I'm not sure, running around the bottom of the building, representing the process of Darwinian natural selection. Though the West has begun abandoning Christianity, they were looking for inspiration elsewhere, and this is where ancient civilizations start to play an important role. Ancient Egypt played a major role, especially after the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb. See, and I quote, "On the 4th of November 1922, archaeologist Howard Carter had uncovered the first stone step leading down the tomb of the boy pharaoh Tutankhamun in the Valley of the Kings near Luxor." Carter described the wall paintings and how, in his words, quote, "everywhere the glint of gold," which is not so incidentally an identifying factor of Art Deco. This is not a coincidence nor drawing parallels where there are none. See, this Daily Express in autumn of 1922 coined the term Tetmania and called it, quote, "probably the most significant peacetime mass media event up to then of the 20th century." Hell, even the most important authors in the English language, or one of the most important, Evelyn Waugh, wrote about the topic in his essay entitled Labels in 1929, saying, "The romantic circumstances of the Tutankhamun discovery were so vulgarized in the popular press that one unconsciously came to regard it less as an artistic event than some deed of national prowess. Speedrun? Speed record broken or birth in the royal family. Something this culturally significant would not have gone unnoticed by the architects of the day. In the book, there was an insistence that there are some Aztec and some Far Eastern influences. I cannot include them because I do not have the time. There might be a hint of Aztec and Eastern influences, but there was a whole lot of ancient Egypt. So you might be wondering, wouldn't this glittering of gold, even if they did not use real gold, wouldn't it be really expensive? It indeed would be. And if you're just a tad bit historically literate, you would naturally wonder, well, hey, that doesn't make any sense. I mean, the Great Depression happened in the late 20s. There's no way they would have built something that needs such expensive ornamentation. And again, you would be right. This is why a new form of Art Deco would be born, Streamline Deco. So I'm going to start with a quote, and this is the only quote that I could find relating to Streamline Deco, really. So here it goes. The Streamline modern style was a variant of Art Deco particularly important in America. The innumerable small roadside structures dependent on their dramatic external form to catch the eye spread Art Deco imagery nationwide. Diners, high street shops, and petrol stations competed for attention, often brilliantly clothed in stainless steel or rendered concrete and always dramatically picked out with neon light at night. I suppose the glitter of gold was replaced by the glitter of neon. So that's really all there is to say about Streamline Art Deco. That's what I could find in the book and even the wiki article. So it's worthy of mentioning that it was also inspired by the design of ships, and it was less ornamental. So I guess in the end, Mr. Reef was actually right. It wasn't a singular deco, it was decos. Either way, they perfectly encapsulated the zeitgeist of the era. Conclusion. The demise of Art Deco is woeful, but little did they know, these now nameless, out with the old revolutionaries of the early 20th century, that the old world they were so eager to get rid of would create a world eager to get rid of them as well. They did not see how those who came after them would be just as eager to dispose of them. What was once considered magnanimous and ornate is now considered crepuscular and needlessly excessive. Art Deco is dead for many reasons, most obvious of which is that it is simply too expensive. Another would be the changing of beauty standards of our modern times, for what we consider beautiful is probably different than what they would have considered beautiful. For now, the modernism of the early 20th century has won. It has re-emerged in every skyscraper where the hackneyed form follows function phrase comes to mind. But I mean, one must keep in mind that the Chrysler Building has aged like wine. Meanwhile, Burj Khalifa is barely 14 years old and it already sucks. I mean, come on. The question is, will Art Deco have a re-emergence? Again, probably not. As I've mentioned, it's too expensive, so go visit Crafter instead, I guess. That being said, Art Deco is, in my eyes at least, an absolute marvel to look at. I have a list of all these amazing Art Deco buildings that I would love to visit. They're all across the globe. They're mostly in the States, but there's plenty elsewhere also, because it was such a unifying movement, such a worldwide movement. But seeing how me and apparently so many others like me live near destitute poverty, best we can do now is visit Talos 1 or the Last Resort. I understand why the Art Deco movement has come to complete cessation, but I don't understand why there's such a shortage of Art Deco games. I mean, for future releases, I could only think of Twisted Towers using the Art Deco style and not much else. We need more Art Deco games, please and thank you. Actually, we need more Space Age games using Luigi architecture. Something like the Jetsons would be great. The optimism and utopianism of that era would be a joy to explore. Okay, bye now. Why do we have a desire to make our surroundings aesthetically appeasing? What makes things pretty? Are we the only animal who enjoys decorating their surroundings? There's a documentary on that. It's called Why Beauty Matters by the BBC. I'll link it in the description below. Anyways, here's a bunch of grown men dressed in the buildings they have designed, which I find absolutely hilarious. Okay, listen, so I had so much research done, and I threw most of it away. I got sick physically. I mean, mentally I'm always sick. And I wanted to get this thing over with. I'm okay with how it turned out, but it could have been so much more. If I had the support needed, I would have done it really. But for now, this channel feels like an echo chamber. And this is all the courage and effort I can muster. I mean, it is the longest video I have done. It's not the best. I aim to improve with every other video I put out there, but I need a wider audience for that. So, as much as I hate doing this, I have heard the algorithm really pushes the video if it were done, so here goes. Like, comment, subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next video.